it's hard to avoid hearing the cookie cutter speech from someone at some point. Somewhere along the way in all of our lives, it seems that we get voices in our lives, people, or they may not even realize they're doing it, that sort of project to us this cookie cutter expectation, how your life is supposed to go, if you want to live the good life. Maybe they don't say it quite that way. Maybe they don't lob it with the threat of you're a failure unless you do X or Y or Z, but we sure do get an awful lot of voices telling us, implicitly if nothing else, here's what the good life looks like. You want to have what the really, really good way of life is, do this. And like I said, there's variations on the particulars, but sometimes it's, okay, what you need to do, here's the cookie cutter we need you to fit into. You need to, get good grades in school, and then play varsity on a sports team in your high school years, and find your high school sweetheart. You get a job, you have 2.5 kids and a white picket fence and a dog, and you're living, the good life. Or sometimes it'll be something like, what you really need to do in life is you need to be successful in business, and you need to find a great idea or start a business or become an entrepreneur. And when your name is known because of your success and your financial wealth, that's how you know you're living the good life. It's another variation on the same old thing of fitting somebody else's cookie cutter expectations. There are other assumptions. Your family has to look this way. As long as you fit this mold, then your family's okay. Or as long as your life path basically follows this set of events in this particular order, then you too can have the good life. I can remember growing up in the late days of the TV show Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous that would sort of chart out, here are these really expensive, lavish homes owned by the richest people in the world, and it was sort of shown off as like, wow, look how awesome these people's lives are. These people are living the good life. That's what the good life really is, where you've got enough wealth, you can flaunt it, you can be on TV, you can be famous just for having a lot of wealth. And we live in an age now, no longer with Robin Leach hosting that TV show, but with countless videos on social media showing, here's our latest sports car, here we're unboxing this latest technology, take a look at all that we've got. People showing off their lavish lives, and it's really hard not to hear that as this is the good life. They're all just variations on the same idea. There's a cookie cutter out there, and maybe this isn't the cookie cutter for you, maybe this one is, or maybe this one is, but basically the good life is a matter of finding the right cookie cutter shape, and then you got to get yourself as close to this as possible. And once you're doing that, then you're living the good life. Sometimes it even gets cast in a religious vein as well, and you end up hearing things like, well, you live your life this certain way, you fit this cookie cutter, or you do things this particular way, and that's when God will bless you. Good things will happen to you. That's how you'll know God is shining on you when you're wealthy and successful and prominent, and you get that promotion, and your kids are on the honor roll. All those things will be signs to you that you're blessed, living the good life. You almost don't notice how many voices there are saying that to us all the time, all with slightly different variations, slightly different cookie cutter shapes they want to commend to us, but all with the same basic idea. If you make yourself fit this picture, then you're living the good life, and therefore God will shine on you, or something like that. We almost don't even notice how pervasive that kind of talk is, the same way a fish doesn't know it's wet, right? When you are surrounded by it all the time, when it's the air you breathe, when it's all around you, you don't notice. And maybe we don't even notice how very different Jesus' way of seeing things is. Because aside from the cookie cutter way of thinking, Jesus offers something really, really different in the beginning of what we sometimes call the Sermon on the Mount, that we're going to be taking a look at in pieces week by week in these coming weeks here in the Sundays after Epiphany. And it's amazing, if we actually listen to Jesus, how upside down and inside out his vision of what the good life looks like, of what it means to be blessed by God. Instead of saying being blessed is, you'll know you're blessed when you've got more money than your neighbors and newer stuff and bigger things and everything's going your way, Jesus has a very different set of criteria, a different set of glimpses of what it looks like to be blessed, to be living the good life, or at least the life of what matters to God. Jesus says it this way in what we sometimes call the Beatitudes. And this starts in the beginning of Matthew chapter 5. And so Jesus goes up on a mountain, almost like this new Moses figure, and he starts teaching the disciples and people who are listening to him. And he says this: "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil falsely against you on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." It's such a totally different, like, upside-down picture of how things work. When we have been handed so many people's projections on how you're supposed to be successful in life, get more money, get the promotion, have kids who are bringing home the sports trophies, or who are making you proud, and put their report cards on the refrigerator. There's this sort of assumed trajectory of here's how your life is supposed to go. You know, do this and be successful, do this and this and this, and your relationships will fall into place, and your kids will be well behaved, and your job and your life. All these things are sort of sold to us as when you get all those things lined up, that's how you know you're living the good life. And Jesus instead gives this description of people whose lives and stories didn't fit the pattern, didn't go according to plan, or don't fit the cookie cutter. Jesus lifts up and says, you know what God's looking out for in particular? God's looking out for the people who haven't had things go their way. So the brokenhearted, and those who are grieving and mourning, and those who've been denied justice or righteousness, those who are too lowly to be noticed by anybody else, the people on the margins, the people who are poor in spirit, and as Luke will say the same in his gospel, those who are just plain poor. In other words, the people who didn't fit the cookie cutter picture of what the good life looked like. And then Jesus adds other virtues about here's the kind of things that do matter to God. People who live by mercy, who are gracious and kind to other people, even when you don't get something in return of it. Those who are able to work and live in peace with neighbors. That's what it's like to be a child of God. Those who seek and strive to work for justice in the world. Those who are even willing to be persecuted or thrown into jail or get into trouble for doing what's right. Those are the people who get it. That's what the good life looks like. It is totally upside down from the 2.5 kids dog in the white picket fence life that we are so often sold as what the good life is. It's so different than watching either lifestyles of the rich and famous or watching a YouTube video where somebody's showing off their lavish mansion or sports car. It's instead saying those things don't really make a life. But instead, it's about being reoriented around what matters to God, which turns out to be as simple as doing justice, loving mercy, and walking humbly with God. Turns out that what Jesus says, that sounds upside down in so many ways to our ears, is really no different than what the prophets had been saying all along about what the good life is after. That's why this Sunday we're also going to hear those powerful words of Micah, who sort of lobs out, what is it that God really wants? Should I offer sacrifices? Should I come with lots of burnt offerings? What is it that you want, God? And in the end, the answer comes back, you know what God's been after. What God has always wanted from us, what God has only wanted from us, is that we live the life that really is life, to do justice, to love mercy, to walk humbly with God. That's what God's been after all along, because that's the life that really is life. That's the good life. That's the conversation we're having this weekend at worship. And we invite you to be a part of it as well. And maybe all of us might be tapped more deeply into what Jesus sees as the good life. See you Sunday.